Yeah, you say that, but at the same time, I don't, right? And let me be completely transparent. I do and I did, right? And even today was a day that I said to myself, let me read the room a little bit, and let me be considerate of the space that I'm in, the historical value of the space. So I went to the organizers and I asked them, hey, is there any rules or anything that you completely have outlawed at this point? So I think that was important for me to do. But outside of that, I'm not really too worried about what the audience is gonna think once I get started. I'm kind of in my own zone, so we go from there.
He's kind and polite. I just say, where can I set up? I'm running late because I was on Route 3. The thing is to be true to myself. And all different people love my poetry because I don't dilute it for anybody.
I know that's right. You can clap it up for that.
They're like, I don't think I am.
All right. So when Queen booked the two of you guys together, and she told me, I was like, this is a match made in heaven because of the musicality of both of your work. So I wanted to ask both of you the role musicality plays in your writing process. You know, what comes first, the beat or the poem? How do you decide what the poem or what the beat itself means? I would love to hear from both of you on that.
Sure. For me, I guess it depends on the piece. You know, there's certain pieces that I created specifically to music. So when I'm going about those types of pieces, the beat comes first. And then there's certain things that are created based off of feeling, and the feeling comes first, and I think there's always a natural rhythm that goes into that. I think we speak in rhythm. I think everything that we do has a tempo and a beat to it. So I think it's always some type of musicality involved in everything that we're doing. As you can see, I have a specific cadence, I guess you can say. And that plays a huge factor in how I hear the work as it's being written, right? So I hear it before it ever even is performed on the stage. I'm visualizing how it's gonna come out, how it's gonna sound, and I'm tweaking it to get it to that exact point that I want as far as the artistry of it all. So I guess I'm not sure if I answered that, but yeah, it depends on the piece. It depends on the piece. Sometimes the beat comes first, sometimes the words come first, but the music is always there.
What he said. But because I work with this thing now, the words stop coming at one particular time. Anybody that's a writer knows they don't always come. They don't come, they stay stopped, they take naps. I have ADD, and then they hide behind that, and then that. So what I've done is I just go in a room in the morning, and what I had stopped doing and I had to circle back was I jumped out of bed and went into my room and I started making beats, just and then I have a keyboard, but that was too much to bring. But when I get better, I'm gonna start. So I do keyboard. Yep, got a little MIDI, and I would do it. So then the music speaks to me, and the music inspires me to write. It incites words that come up, and that is how. Like if there's a song playing now, sometimes it will open a floodgate of just. Yeah, you identify it, right? Yeah, it's like, right, that's it, right. And so it starts coming, but the thing is, I will hear that outside other people's music. When I started generating music that opened floodgates, I was like, who are you? Who are you? But they come. When I force, it doesn't work out well. And I learned to start doing music, just put it like this. I am the music translator. I translate words from music.
I love that. I needed to hear that. or the words are taking a nap. They have been taking a fat ass nap for a very long time. So I've definitely needed to hear this. This is for you, Craig. You have a naturally like booming voice. You don't need a mic. You can fill up a room instantaneously. What advice would you give, especially to young poets who are struggling to find their voice, both literally and, metaphorically, on, embodying the space and the words like that?
Beautiful question. I want to just start off by saying I'm still finding my voice, right? I think the importance is learning how to amplify your voice as you're finding it, right? So there's a lot of things that are technicalities that go into it, such as the acoustics of a room. This room is perfect for sound. So I knew from the very beginning of this whole set that I did not need to touch this mic at all. Right? So I use things like that to my advantage. When I first started performing, especially outside, that's exactly where I started performing, in front of like city halls and stuff, where there is no mic and there is no echo, right? So you have to project. As we're performing in front of street corners and everything else, it's a lot more noise. There's cars going by and everything else. So you have to bring a certain part of you out, and I'm even going as far as taking like singing lessons and learning how to use my diaphragm and everything else that goes into just helping me create that sound that I want. So I'm still finding my voice, and I think another thing that if you are a poet who uses their voice primarily, I think my voice carries a lot of my work. I think if you're using your voice in that way, learn about recovery just as much as you learn about how to project and everything else. So taking care of my voice has been one of the things that I'm most concerned with at this moment, because I've realized my voice is the instrument.
Yes. Yes.
My voice is the instrument.
I love that, because I feel like, especially young performers or people that only grew up with poetry, they don't necessarily see how a performance background, a vocal background, can be what makes the difference between an okay performance and a really great one. So for our last question, before I open it up, well, I guess it'll be last if anyone else has questions, otherwise I have more. I just want to hear both of you about your biggest influences, because I was hearing a lot of references, and I feel like so much of just Black and brown culture is building up on what the people before us created and being in conversation with them. So who are you guys in conversation with in your work?
So when you said who, is this artistic influence or just regular?
Anyone who is influencing your work in a strong enough capacity that you can identify it.
Okay. Let's start small up to that point. Who I looked up to, artistry, I'm saying it wrong, but who I first looked up to was Oprah, because it was Oprah that did a poem on stage for the 25th anniversary of oh my gosh, it was like an Essence Award, and it was a long time ago, and I saw her do a poem, and I was doing poetry already, but I was writing poetry, and it didn't look like that. And I was like, that's how Black people do poetry. Oh shoot. It resonated with me. And then Saul Williams. I looked up to him. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to find my voice. I like T.D. Jakes because his voice is deep, is strong, and that man's a poet. If you take out the other things, so people with voices. And now, the other people that I look up to that aren't artists are mothers that can feed children and they make $15 an hour. They make $15 $50 an hour. And they stretch, and the children are happy, and they don't care about anything else or anyone else. I care about men who understand whatever they done is over, and if they made a mistake, they can accept their errors and move on. They don't dwell in the past. I like men who are about their ish. And I'm not talking about paying for stuff and doing it. I'm talking about there's nothing like a man who can say, I'm sorry to myself. He can say, I'm sorry. I'm getting chills. I'm thinking of this one guy that I see on YouTube or wherever. I think his name is Trip. And this guy, he was like on some show, but my algorithm now is black men who are woke and who can accept responsibility of things that they have done, and they move better and they make better choices. That's who I look up to. Women who do their thing, and women who stand up to the government and don't give a fuck. Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful. Early influences, I'm not sure if it's the chord of me. Yeah, y'all good? Alright. Early influences, number one, I think I give so much of the credit to black women, right? Specifically being my mother, my grandmother, but my mother specifically because of how she raised us. My mom was a very small woman. I'm not that large in frame, but my mom was even smaller than me. She's probably like 4'11" or something, right? But a mini like giant. And her voice was so booming, right? So if she was ever outside and she started arguing with somebody, I know we do that, right? But she would argue with someone and you could hear it all the way down the block and you knew it was a problem, you know what I mean? Or she would hop out the car and she swore her arms were so big, right? But they were like really small, like little chicken legs, right? But she swore she was so big, but she carried that in her. She had a very big bark and the bite was even bigger. So I take a lot of inspiration from my mother. She would play music, and when I say our speakers at the house were as big as like that sign right there, she had two of those in the house, and she would turn it all the way up. So if you ever wanted to get her attention, you, Ma! Ma! You had to get over that music. So I think naturally just learned to be loud, right? And then my family is just a loud family. If we ever come to a family gathering and we get it going, you might not know what anyone else, if an outsider walks in, they might not know what is being said. You know what I mean? Because it just sounds like a whole bunch of yelling, but within that, there's musical notes to it all. You know what I mean? You know what the tones actually mean. You know when someone goes high or when someone goes low, what it means in the sense of attitude or anger or whatever it may be, right? So I take those inspirations, and then specifically in the arts now, a lot of people have told me who I resemble, right? Because I didn't start off as a poet, or I didn't start off in poetry. I always wrote raps and stuff as a little kid, but I didn't think I would be considered a poet at this day and age. So now I'm starting to study people like Gil Scott-Heron, Amiri Baraka. I'm still trying to get into the last poets and some of those different things, but these are names that people have thrown at me and said, hey, you should really look into some of these people. But I for sure, Amiri Baraka is probably like one of my favorite poets from that time. And then I look up to all of the local poets, the people that are right here. So the people that I'm in the room, my auntie, we all call her auntie. You know what I mean? Right? So there's a lot of people who are local that I take great inspiration from, and every time I see them perform, it inspires me because it's real, it's right here in person. I got inspired by your performance today, just seeing everything, and yeah, like so. Take it, right? So I'm constantly looking for inspiration, and then a lot of my inspiration just comes from living life, right? When you're outside on a day-to-day basis, and you see what people are going through, you hear the stories that people are telling. I just was telling right, I was saying earlier, as I come through Patterson, I thought New York was something, right? But when you come here, you know, it's a different side. It almost feels like you're entering a different side of the world. You know, you see tents and you see so much pain and all of that in this environment. So sometimes we turn our pain into beauty through art, right? And I think that's so important to go outside and live and connect with the people and hear what the people are saying. So someone might say something to me and it might not resonate right there in that moment, but a day later or a couple of hours later, it comes back to me and then that turns into a poem, right? I might see something in my house, right? I have a piece called My Wife Will. You were telling me that that's one of your favorite pieces, right? And I literally only wrote that piece because I seen a hot comb on the stove, right? And I started thinking about all the things that Black women go through as far as, it's okay, it's okay.
It's all right.
Excuse me, we gonna work with this co-work. But yeah, so it's so much beauty in every single moment, and I'm constantly searching for it. And then I'm also open to it finding me at the times that I least expect it. So those are where I get a lot of my inspiration.
Hopefully it'll hold out a little longer, but what you said just reminded me of a quote by Elie Wiesel, who was a Holocaust survivor, and he said, "Write only if you cannot live. Write only what you alone can write." So I just think that's so beautiful, and if anyone else has any questions, I know we have a class in here, so I'm hoping y'all have some questions. Oh, actually, you guys have been spared for 1 second. Dujuana wants to ask y'all a question.
Hey, does anybody have a mint? Because I feel like I'm offending myself.
Pretty good.
I
What's
will
an
be-
alto? Oh no, I have to have that. Thank you. I left mine at home.
I'm good, thank you. Thanks, Monty.
Person over there dying. I was first on the phone.
So think of your questions. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. On this thing, like they were talking about, sometimes the words they cannot. I would like to know for both of them, if that ever happened to you that you have a dry season where you will look for the word, you don't have nothing that comes to your mind.
I would love to start off with this. I'm one of those people that everyone else kind of gets mad at, but I do not believe in writer's block. I do not believe in writer's block. I think if you can't write anything, write your name. Who cares, right? Write whatever comes to, write about the day that you're having, whatever it is. I believe in deliberate practice, right? So I crank out poems like anything else. And they're not always the best poems. I think we have writer's block when we're looking to create our next best thing, right? So I have hundreds of poems and you may never hear those because they were just practice. And every once in a while, something magnificent comes through the practice. So I personally do not believe in writer's block. I do understand that sometimes it's important to step away from writing so that you can experience a little bit and go and live. And I think that's where that term comes from, as far as like our words kind of taking a nap, right? We simply just need to experience a little bit more. Go and have conversations or whatever else. But I believe that if you're a writer, you should practice, if not every day, very often, right? Be intentional about, there's an exercise that was created by a person named Bleak, which was popularized by Mia X, that she taught to us, which is called sevens, where we take 7 words, and if you guys gave me 7 words right now, in 7 minutes, we would have to put together a poem using those 7 words, right? So create exercises and things that will get that spark, right? Don't just wait for the work to come to you. Sometimes it will, but most times it won't. And if it does, and you don't have the exercise as far as training yourself to write when those moments come to you. I'm most upset about the poems that you guys will never hear because I was too lazy to get up and write them. You see what I'm saying? You know those poems were so good and you like, I'll write it later. And it never comes back to you. It never comes back. So it is a muscle. It is truly a muscle, and you have to train it to get to the point where you can make it do what you want it to do. So now, today I was writing with little kids, and we were writing so many poems. And I was like, all of these aren't great, but at least I wrote at least 10, you know what I mean? So at least one of those might be something that I could go back and work on. Another thing, excuse me for taking so much, but another thing is try to get out of the habit of editing while you're writing, right? Because sometimes we edit ourselves out of a piece before it's even given room to breathe. So I'm learning that copy and paste is one of my greatest friends right now, because I'll write something and then I'll be like, oh, I kind of want to change that. But I need to copy that and keep that as his original version and then paste it and then go back and edit the pasted version, so that if sometimes I just start editing stuff and it's a whole different poem by the time I get to the end of it. I'm like, that's not even what I started off with, and I don't remember what I wrote before, and now I just scrap the whole poem and throw it away. So, you know, we just have to create these deliberate practices to help us with our writing, and through practice we get better, not perfect. All right?
I am not like him. I don't call it block, I just say it's not time. My poems are like birth, impregnated, and it has to grow and develop, and then it comes out. That's if I'm writing and I don't have any music. But then I do research, because sometimes the things that come out of my mouth are not like actual, and I don't ever want to be caught in not saying anything that's not actual, because I have a whole bunch of thoughts, and because I think it, I have to make sure I check to see if it's right. There's like a whole pregnancy that actually happens. My works will, I can go for a very, very long time without writing, but I can't go for a long time without creating. And if I do, I get depressed. And I just recently had someone pass in my family. And the last time I really wrote something was in January. So I record everything that I write now. And I put a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I just put stuff out there. Sometimes I'm like, it's not, you put it out. Put it out. Put it out. I'll think of a hook, put a beat to it, and nothing else but the hook. But as dope as I still put it out. And if it's supposed to develop into a piece, when I force it in coming, it doesn't work well for me. And I wish I was as disciplined to exercise that muscle. So, but when it comes, I already know it's gonna be good. Yeah, so that is to answer your question.
So I have a question for each of you. Dujuana, is Here They Come your signature piece now?
Here they come, y'all.
Yeah, Here They Come.
I think it's how you do it.
Be careful, the letter overlapping yourself.
We don't really need the mic.
Yeah,
Actually, when I turned it on, because I haven't performed it in a minute, and I heard that boom, boom, I was like, because it brought it back, and then I started practicing, and then I started writing. The roots underneath us, there's a whole piece, but I left it at home, and I didn't transfer it to my phone to bring. But if I hear that beat and it does it, because I know that is my blackness. I don't know, but I can make it my,
Because it sort of sounds like it morphed into something different from the first time I heard it. And the second part of my statement, it's not really a question, is you do know that your poetry and your beats are now seamless. So it's like, one without the other just won't do for me. So I just want, I know you needed to hear that.
Yeah.
Somebody knows what you're going through.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you so
Um,
much. May I say something? So, Mr. Craig, does things to help him, like he says he takes lessons. I'm getting tutoring on the looper, and I'm learning things about the looper. I just found this guy on YouTube, and I was like, I'll pay you. And he was like, what? And he lives in Germany, and so, yeah, I mean, I spent an hour with him, and he taught me some things about it that they're technical things, but they'll help in the long run. So
It's beautiful. I'm looking forward to our duet.
yes, yes.
So the question now is for Craig. I have two. The first one is, have you ever taken acting classes, or is that a natural thing that you have?
It's natural right now, but since about a week or two ago, I just actually performed in my first play. And, so that is my first acting experience, and we'll see how that goes. Like, I feel like personally this was my best performance since I came back from that, and it's because I've applied some of the things that I learned. Like, I typically would always turn my back to the audience because I just get into my zone. I'll turn around and I'll be back here with it. I'm like, my ancestors back here, I'm talking to them right now. Then I turn back around and point to y'all, and I'll be like, I'm not even looking at y'all. I close my eyes. I'm just in that zone. But just taking some of those techniques that they taught me, like keep your belly button to the audience. You know, if you are gonna make a movement, then make sure that it's a big movement. Don't waste any movement.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Don't waste any movement. And know the power of stillness as well. Right? So know the power of stillness, know the power of silence. Oh, there's so many gems, right? The power of silence. So if you watch a couple of my performances, you notice that I typically try to utilize silence as much as possible, right? Because sometimes even if you have the most booming voice, a loud room will still drown you out.
That's right.
So silence is your friend. Pausing, right? Just making sure that you can take the time to let something breathe. So I feel like I incorporated a lot of those things, and I'm excited to go back and watch this over again. I'm going to watch it in a couple of ways. The first time I'm going to watch it just to enjoy it. The second time I'm going to watch it to see how my body was moving. The third time I'm going to watch it silently, right? And just see everything else that I was doing. And there's a couple of things that I'll look forward to. But yes, that's my first acting experience. I haven't been trained at all, but I'm looking forward to it.
But thank you for giving us those gems, and I'm going to pick up a couple of them. So the next question is a bit more serious.
Yes.
And this is for all of us, okay, not just me and the artist. I come from a generation where the N-word is just dumb. And I have to be honest, every time I hear it, it makes my skin crawl. So, two-part question. How comfortable are you guys with hearing that? And how comfortable are you giving it to, when it's just us-ness,
Yeah.
it kind of feels a little different. Not for me, but when we're in mix, it definitely, I'm like, if I don't ever hear it again, I'll be happy. So, yeah, let's talk about that.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought this up. Like I said, I went over to a couple of people just to ask beforehand because I know that sometimes just being considerate of everyone that's in the room, especially like if there's children in the room, there's a lot of other things that I could have added into there just because that's how it was originally written, but I might have switched it out just a little bit. Or sometimes I want everyone to get the message, and sometimes that's a good thing and that's a bad thing sometimes. Because I want this side of the room to get the message just as much as this side of the room to get the message. Sometimes I might say, I have the N word right there, but I'm gonna say brother once more, right? So it all depends, but I grew up on this word like it was a normal thing, right? It's slang, it's something that was regularly used. So I didn't see the danger of it until I became an adult and someone who thought for themselves. Now I see how loosely it is being used in the community, and that's why I created a poem like all the N words are dead, right? Because it's saying, it's making a public statement that we should not be using this, even if we're comfortable in using it as a slang or anything else. So I have a couple of pieces that have the N word. I think the two pieces that you heard today are my main two pieces that has it. And then after I wrote that last piece, I haven't really written any more pieces with it. But we'll see how it goes. You know, I'm not going to sit here and put on the front for everybody in the room and say I'm never going to use the word anymore, because sometimes it's just ingrained. You know what I mean? I have another piece that's called a piece, a poem that white people can't read called satire. Right? And if you guys ever get a chance, you should go read it. But it's about the use of the N word as in a term of endearment, right? And how you can greet someone, but just by the switch of tone or anything else, it can go from endearment into endangerment, right? So I'm very careful in how I try to come across when I'm doing these things, and I hope that people understand that it's for educational purposes in these environments, right? With respects to my own people and with respects to everyone else that is in the room. So I think it was
No, I didn't finish with letting you know that the first poem kind of just blurted it out there, and the second poem cleaned it up. And it was very much felt why you did the first poem and then followed it up with the second poem. But again, for the audience, like, I still cringe, right?
And you're on their toes.
Right?
And if I can be honest about that, I want people to be on their toes when it comes to that. I want you to be aware that this is something that, why are we saying this? Why do people say this? How was this word created or invented, and who gave it the meaning and everything else? I want you to go home and consider these things. I want it to stick with you and resonate with you. So if I made you uncomfortable, I think I did my job today, right? And tomorrow we can go back and start to think about how do I empower you. That's why we do a piece like Black Like God at the end, right? Because it's the evolution. So I try to tell a story in every set that I do, and I intentionally design the sets. That's why it was so hard for me when I did see the majority of the room. I asked the question, should I change my set? Should I change my set just to make it a little bit more comfortable? And then I had a moment where I said, well, forget it. They gotta feel it today. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So, yeah, that was my question. I still have to think about it.
Does anyone else have a question?
What did you feel?
I'm open to dialogue, and I think in controlled environments, this is completely fine. I'm not asking you to say the word, I'm asking you to tell me how it makes you feel, right? Because I think the problem in our society today is that we don't have an open dialogue, and everything is being said behind closed doors. So later on, everyone might go home and say, "Oh, you really wore that word?" You know what I mean? But while we're in the room, it's like we don't know what is being said, right? So I thank you for opening up that dialogue, and if anyone feels inclined to share their opinions on it, please.
I think this is the first time I'm going to share this story with my friends. I was born and raised in Haiti. Most of the people right here, you know the story of Haiti with slavery. During my entire life, the same word they translate in my language for nigger is a proud word back home. So since I come, it's really a big fight for me. Between like when my friend like black men or black friends say that word, and then whoever else say the different meaning it has.
Yeah.
And for me, war, and this word being a part of so many poems that I wrote, and they go the way. This is a big confusion from the Bible.
And I think
Because in my country, we call a man neg. That means this is somebody who's very strong, who take his responsibility, who never step back in front of no obstacle. And the one we use for the strong woman is neges. Neges. But when you, like, when I describe my mom, who is my hero, I see her as a neges. Back home. Now, can you imagine how to
switch
live between this thing, you know? I just,
it's like a cold switching almost.
I don't, for me, because in that language also, the tone mean a lot. The tone mean a lot. Like the same word you use to make somebody happy or to make someone smile, you can use the same word but a different tone to make that person want to be listening for us. The tone mean a lot. So I just want to share this part while we discuss about it. It's about sometimes cultural context, you know.
Absolutely, thank you for sharing that. So, I'm taking you off the hook, man. You look nervous.
No, these are my students, so I was But I will answer, but I was just gonna see if they wanted to say it.
Go ahead.
She's grading y'all right now. This actually great.
No, I mean, yes, it makes me uncomfortable to hear that word, and I would never say it, but it's not for me to decide how you want to use the word.
Yeah, that's good. So, when I heard it, I never once thought anything negative or felt embarrassed by it, right? When I heard it, and I heard you saying it, and when I heard you saying, they gone, they gone, they gone, they gone, they gone, they gone, they gone. I knew where you're going. You know, I felt that this word we are putting, they died. They're no more. So what you see is us, not them, not those people. You see us. And that's what I interpreted from what you said. But if I'm, okay, a short story. I went to go see some off Broadway play. And we're in the waiting room, and they were playing Kanye West. And they played the not radio version.
Wow.
No, it wasn't in Paris. I think it ain't nothing but a gold digger.
Brooklyn.
But a Brooklyn. Right. So I was like, I left. I left. I didn't care because whoever thought it was good to play that, now the audience was just as big as this. I was like, okay, I was the only black person, the only one there. And nope, it was me and someone else. And I was like, I'm uncomfortable. I'm very uncomfortable. And it was just that they were playing it while they were setting up. I had to go.
Well, how is anybody supposed to know when it's okay? You know, like, I'm in the radio and I was like, oh, wait a minute, what is that? So, like, that's the thing.
Public areas, when you play songs like that, they're offensive.
Very offensive. But the poetry was different.
Yes, different. It's
He
poetry.
was telling a story in his way, explaining why it should go away.
Yeah.
He wasn't bringing it.
Right.
Although
exactly.
he grew up in that era when that was a term of endearment.
Right.
Me, that ain't a term of endearment.
Right.
Like, you don't fight.
Right.
This is a question, we had this conversation a little bit earlier. where we said the artist's responsibility. Right? What is the artist's responsibility as we're creating, and once we decide to step into the spotlight, right? We have a responsibility because there's little kids who are going to be listening. There's elders who are going to be listening. There's so many different groups of people who are going to be listening. And not only are you the introduction to maybe your own culture, but you're the educator of your culture, right? So the responsibility is a little bit greater for me now, and I can't create as loosely. Or if I do create as loosely, I vet the work now. And I might share it amongst my peers first, right? So there's a lot of things that I want to explore as a writer, maybe like as far as sexuality topics and everything else, but I don't go onto the stage and perform those first. Or if there's things that I'm still healing from myself, it might not be for the stage first. It's for you to just express, right? And that was done during the writing. But yeah, so the artist's responsibility is something that we should all take into question as artists. What is my responsibility as I'm going up here on this stage and I'm performing this? What do I want? This is a question that was asked to me a couple of weeks ago. What do you want? What do you want? So you should be asking yourself that question every time that you go into a room, when you go on the stage, when you're interacting with your peers. What is it that you want? And then also, what is it that you want them to get from it? Right? So the artist's responsibility, I think that's a question that's at hand at this moment.
If I can add on to the artist's responsibility, my grandfather is black. I don't look like him. So it's never been.
Yes, you do.
It's never been my word to claim, because mostly because I don't want to have to carry around a picture of my grandfather to have credentials.
Right.
But it is something that I think about, because if somebody were to see me and not know, if I say the word, the artist's responsibility is always there. And it always depends on, who are you in front of? What do you look like phenotypically? People think I'm Egyptian. I'm nowhere near Arab at all. So it's always about sitting there and thinking, what are you doing? Sorry.
Ma'am! I swear,
And the fact
I have
I'm sorry, I'm lost my thoughts. But yeah, so that's what I'm always thinking about, not just like as somebody who is 1/4 black, but also as somebody who is Puerto Rican, who is performing. I've never used the word wetback or spit in my poetry on stage, because you never know who in that audience is going to think it is now okay to say it.
I used a simple line when I was in Delaware at a Black Storytellers event, and I said I had, and excuse me if I offended anyone with this word, but I said, to describe myself, I said I had chinky eyes as a baby, and they said, you cannot use that word. That is a discriminatory term, and you cannot use that word. You will offend certain people. And I said, well, people said this to me all my life. What are you talking about? Why can't I say this word? It was my own understanding. And I think going back to what the brother said, a lot of things are lost in translation.
Yes.
And through the use of the word, this is our attempt to take our power back, right? Because if it was being used as a derogatory sentence or whatever it is, right? And then that now a person is saying, well, I'm a devalue this word so much that it's used loosely that we don't even get affected by it, right? I mean, let a person come up.
But we do.
Who you? So now we address the double standards and everything else, because as artists we're putting out the art, and how do we so it's up to you to then say, okay, realistically we're gonna recite, and that is my goal, to get them to recite these things. So yeah, I hope that we're able to scrape the surface. It would take us to the bottom of it, but because we've had the dialogue, it opens us up for so much more empathy. All right, so thank you guys.
Well, I wanted to add on that the week called the artist's responsibilities. There's a poem I have that is fire it is dope, but it is talking about other women. I wrote it when I was pissed, and I mean, I have some gems in there. You would have been picking tobacco, picking cotton, pushing on sanitary napkins. Have you forgotten seeing our family soul like hit records on altar block? Easy, I'm telling you, it is super high, right? But because I'm talking about someone, because I wrote it when I was mad, and it came out, and that was a small tweak, but I used references of Shirley Chisholm, that this woman that wouldn't compare to these particular things, and because I thought about that person, I never do a poem. I just don't. I used to do it, and then someone said it. The last time I did it was in Harlem, and I got a standing ovation, and I was like, I'm not doing this again, because it didn't feel right. I mean, it was just like, because I gave it. I mean, I'm a performer, so I gave it. I gave it like I wrote it how I felt. It's not on, you can't find it anywhere written. Back then when I did it, I don't think anybody recorded it. I've never seen it. No one will ever see it, but yeah, we have responsibility. And like I said earlier, like I write for me, but I don't share everything that I write, right? So I definitely understand what you're saying. And yeah, I used to curtail my poems to audiences, and then I just say, I'm just gonna do it, I do rated G stuff, but not all time. Shut up, Isabel. I do rated G stuff, but now that I know the schools here, they like those colorful words. They're like, yes, we can hear the word F. Fuck.
I think we're on
Yeah, I think we're gonna close out on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Last thing I'll say, last thing I'll say is, you never know when you're pushing boundaries, and you also don't know when you're out of bounds, right? So be willing to take risks sometimes, but understand that you are taking the risk, and it can backfire as well. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here.